This program was made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Melinda Kiefer, and welcome to Live Green, Tennessee, where we take you across our great state to explore agriculture, agritourism, sustainable living practices, and so much more. In this episode, we talked to Alane Boyd, CEO and founder of BurgerFit in Cookeville, Tennessee, who launched her company with one simple idea: to get people eating more vegetables even though they don't like them, using organic, grass-fed beef. Then we visit Maryville, Tennessee, so grab your bucket and let's go berry picking, where the Rutherfords have been growing big sweet strawberries for more than 4 decades. The farm first opened in 1976, and at that time, they were only a U-pick operation. But back in 2009, they added the pre-pick operation to help cater to their various customers who come back year after year. And finally, we sit down with Dr. Alane Windham at the 11th Annual Fall Gardeners Festival at the Plateau Research and Education Center in Crossville, Tennessee. Dr. Windham is a professor of plant pathology with UT Extension who researches and teaches forage and grain analysis, plant tissue analysis, plant and pest diagnosis, and soil pH. All this on the next episode of Live Green, Tennessee. Located in Cookeville, Tennessee, we sit down with Alane Boyd, CEO and founder of BurgerFit. Alane recently published a cookbook titled BurgerFit, Eat Burgers, Be Healthy, to show people how you can eat more vegetables by accompanying them with organic, grass-fed beef to make a fabulous burger meal in less than 30 minutes as part of her healthier life for both her and her family.
When I was growing up, my mom always just went to the pantry and was like, what do we have to cook for dinner tonight? And there were times where we'd have rice and peas in the pantry, and that's what we had for dinner, just kind of throw in whatever we had. She worked. And through life, I always struggled with my weight. I was hitting my mid to late 20s, and went to the doctor, and they told me that I had high blood pressure. And if I didn't start making a healthier lifestyle and lose some of the weight, then I was going to have to go on blood pressure medication. And I just could not fathom doing that. So I came home and just was like, I've got to find a way to maintain my weight for life, not just that yo-yo effect that I kept having my whole life. So that day, I just started making little changes, really small ones, to where I kept off 40 pounds, and it's been almost 10 years, kept off the weight. And then I realized my family wasn't eating healthy. They'd come visit here in Cookeville, and they wouldn't eat anything I cooked. So I came up with the idea of, well, I'm just gonna hide the vegetables in the burgers. Nobody asks you what's in a burger, before they eat it. It's a safe food. So started just incorporating that. They loved them. They'd ask me what was in it, and I sometimes I wouldn't tell them because then they wouldn't eat it. And my husband just loved the idea so much that he said, hey, you should make a cookbook. And that was about 4 or 5 years ago, and life gets in the way. And so finally, in June of this year, I finally got to launch the cookbook. It's on Amazon, and just had a lot of fun with building the recipes. There's recipes with just something simple like mushrooms and spinach that people are used to what we call the exotic burgers that have peas and cauliflower and curry, and then we call that our Indian burger, and things that are just kind of more mainstream, like maybe even beets, where people are used to eating those as a kid a little bit more, with Swiss chard or the beets green. So we have a lot of different recipes just using different types of vegetables. So the first thing, when you get your beet, sometimes the beets will have the greens on them, sometimes they won't. Just depends, I guess, on how they look when they're farming them. So you just want to cut this little part off right there. And then I'm going to turn it over and cut off the tail here. This is a root, so. And then some people skin them. I don't even do that. It doesn't matter. So then I just chop it up. Now for a BurgerFit burger, you're gonna throw it in the food processor anyway, so you don't need to spend a lot of time chopping. So I just do a rough chop and have it just like this here. Now, if they're a red beet, they'll dye your hands, so you might want to wear gloves and don't wear anything that you don't want to get red because sometimes it gets messy. There are other color beets though. The golden beet also works really well if you don't want people to see the red color in the burger. They don't even know that it's there. So again, just going to cut off the tail. I like to cut off this kind of dingy part there at the top too. So that part there, and then just slice it, and then a few more little chunks there. And then I'll throw this on a pan and roast them with a little bit of coconut oil or olive oil, whatever your favorite cooking fat is. If it's lard, whatever it is, throw it on a pan, roast them at 400 for about 20 minutes. And you just want to make sure they're a little tender through so you can get a fork all the way through them. So we came up with the name BurgerFit because it's a healthier version of the burger. And really we started doing burgers because people don't ask what's in a burger before they eat them. You know, you go to a barbecue, there's burgers everywhere. They don't ask, they just start eating them. So you just want to get them on your roasting pan, spread them out. You'll have your oil, you can put a little bit of salt on top. Keep it simple. Then for the greens, now if your beets had the greens, then you can use those. But if not, Swiss chard is in the same family as beet greens. And then we use the whole vegetable, so even those stems there, because it's all going in the food processor, and you just want to rough chop those too. Now what I like to do to keep things really easy is right a couple of minutes before the beets are done, I just throw these on the pan too and let them cook for a couple of minutes, mix it all together after it's done, and then you're golden. This is what it'll look like at the end after they're cooked. So you just have a nice tenderness with the beets, and then you have your beet greens that just look a little soft there. And we're gonna throw this into the food processor. So like I said, you don't need to put a lot of time and effort into chopping those. So I'm gonna just scoop these here into the food processor. And I like having a little food processor on handy because it's so much easier to clean than that big one. A lot of times we use beef. I like using Victory beef here, local. It's a grass-fed, grass-finished beef, which is something I learned recently. All right, while the beets are cooling, because you don't want them to be too hot that they burn you or that they start cooking the meat, let those cool a little bit, and then we're gonna get our pound of meat. And like I said, I like using Victory beef, and we're just going to put the beef in here with a teaspoon of salt. So every recipe is a little bit different on how much salt you add depending on what other ingredients go in it, but it's generally a teaspoon of salt. Go ahead, and I like to go ahead and just kind of mix that a little bit, let the salt mix in with the meat before we add the veggies. So just gonna break up this pound of meat a little bit. And now that this is cooled, we'll be ready to food process it. So that's how we started, and I'll even play around with the recipes. You don't have to use beef. You could use ground pork or ground chicken or ground turkey. You know, if you have dietary restrictions with the recipes, make them fit for you on how you like to eat and your style of eating. So after I get the salt mixed up in there, then I mix in the food processed vegetables, and you don't want it to be soupy. So you just want enough to break it up that it'll mix in with the meat well, and then we're just gonna patty them out. And then we're gonna throw them on the oven. Now you can grill them if you want to. They work great. And I always say add the vegetables slowly because you don't want the burger to fall apart. So even though the recipe may say 2 cups, every meat is different. And if you're using a ground chicken or something, just add it slow so that you know that your burger can hold together. And then we're gonna throw these on the skillet. It's really important with our brand, with BurgerFit, and just our personal eating style to eat organically and not have chemicals and GMOs and things in your food. And we really try to pick things from our local farmers market. We are huge supporters of the green market because you know where your food came from. And even several of the vendors, I've been to their farm and gotten to see just how they live every day and how they're producing what they do. And you know if you buy something from them that it was truly grown organically and that it is a good food for your body and your health. So like these beets, they came from Fall Creek Farms, the CSA box that we get every week. They're wonderful. They have one that starts in June and goes through August. The beef, like I said, comes from Victory Beef. I actually have met their Wagyu cows and they're adorable. And we have our honey from Pomona Hill. So we really just try to find all of our ingredients here because we know where they came from instead of something that you buy at the grocery store. Even though it says organic and it is certified, there are certain loopholes that they can work around to still be classified, but maybe not really meet that organic compared to a local farmer. When I first started making BurgerFit burgers, I really overdid it. I would try to put way too much into the burgers, and so each time I'd be putting more and more, and finally my husband was like, Alane, you've got to keep it simple. This is getting too much. There's too many flavors happening in my mouth. So that's when I had to really take a step back and say, okay, let's just pick one vegetable and one green. So we're gonna put that on real nicely. Next, my favorite part is to put a little bit of honey mustard on there, and I actually made this honey mustard myself. It was really funny. One of my best friends from college was visiting, and I told him I made honey mustard, and he goes, how did you do that? I said, I mixed honey with mustard. So put a little honey mustard on there, and then we're gonna spread it out real nicely. Oh, and I hear those burgers sizzling behind us. Then when the burgers are done, we're gonna plate that real quick. And then, if you wanna do your burger Alane style, then we get a nice plate of lettuce. This came from my CSA box too, from Fall Creek Farms. And then we're gonna put a little scoop of this on there. And then we're gonna drizzle the honey mustard on top. And then I'm gonna put the burger on top of that and just break it all. It is so delicious. I can't wait to eat. All right, well these burgers are done over here. So here's our beet burger. You can see the color's a little bit red from the beets. That way, if you need to hide it, the golden beets work perfect. And we're gonna just put that on there, and then nobody will ever know the difference. Then, for the Alane style, just put that burger right on top, and you have a healthy dinner or lunch.
Included in the Knoxville metropolitan area, Maryville, Tennessee is a city and the county seat of Blank County, where Rutherford Farm is located. There's nothing like eating a delicious, fresh Tennessee strawberry right from the field, where anyone can go pick them for the last 40 years.
When you taste that strawberry that you have picked as opposed to what you might find in the grocery store, a smile will come to your face. When you remember those pictures that you have taken, the kids being dirty, or the kids with strawberry juice coming down their chin, it's the living of life that makes it so special. The only reason we set strawberries is because we like strawberries. So nothing particular scientific about it. We just like berries, and other people should if we do. When we set the first strawberries in 1976, we set about 3,000 plants in 4/10 of an acre. That grew to an acre. That grew to 2 acres. Ultimately, it went up to about 6 acres. And then we started paring down some when we moved from the matted row system, where we just planted plants on the bare ground, to what's called plasticulture. And here, on 2.5 acres of plasticulture, we can produce more berries than we could on 6 acres of bare ground. When we form beds, we have a machine that forms a bed, puts drip irrigation down, which is like a soaker hose, puts plastic over top of that bed, seals that bed, and also puts a fumigant or a soil sterilizer into the ground. Sunshine and warmer temperatures will make a strawberry as sweet as it can be. We'll even make sugar jealous. We are very fortunate to have a soil that is high in potassium. Potassium adds a sweet taste to almost anything that you raise on it. So if somebody were to buy the same strawberry plants from the same producer as us and put it on some other different soil type, I can guarantee you their strawberries would not be as sweet as ours. It's simply the soil. The sunshine, the heat, and the soil makes a strawberry that'll put to shame any berry you want to buy in the grocery store.
I pick them and my wife makes freezer jam out of them so we can enjoy them all year round. They certainly taste a lot better than what's available in the local stores, so just the taste is much better, fresher.
Remembering back, a lot of folks would bring their grandchildren out here. Now these people come out and tell us, I'm bringing my children here because my grandmother or my granddaddy brought me. So yes, some people have been coming for years and years. It's part of who they are, what they do. You may not see them but here at the farm, but you're glad to see each other. We ask how the year's been. We encourage almost the old courthouse front yard or front porch mentality where folks would sit and whittle, if you remember that when you were growing up. And so we tell stories here, we tell lies here, but we enjoy each other. There are times I know we have at least 200 people a day out here. During the process of an 8 to 9 week season, there will be thousands of people in here from multiple counties. We even have people who plan their vacations to come here and visit family during strawberry season. We have people who take every year strawberries up to Michigan, to Minnesota, strawberries down to Alabama and Georgia, strawberries into South Carolina. They coordinate their visiting family or vacation so they can pick strawberries. We started with strawberries, but by the late 1970s, we looked for a companion crop and we started setting broccoli. Broccoli has become a rather popular crop here, even folks lining up when it comes in. We're constantly getting requests at the picking stand, when will the broccoli be here? When will the broccoli be here? So we set about 1,500 plants this year. And as time has increased, we've started with cauliflower, cabbage, romaine lettuce. One of the big surprises has been the beets. We're up to now probably selling 40 or 45 bushels of beets every year that come in during the same time frames as strawberries do. Plus green onions, yellow crookneck squash, zucchini squash, all of which comes in during strawberry season. This is something you love and you do it because it gives you fulfillment. I enjoy the challenge, I enjoy the people as a rule. I enjoy raising things, seeing things grow. It's physical, it's mental, it's spiritual. It just adds everything to my life that I'm looking for. I would hope through the years that there would be more folks who would dedicate their ground to staying green, that people can come and say, I can remember what life's all about. And that's what we hope to offer. So we do see that from grandparents bringing grandchildren out to mama and daddies bringing children on their backs out. Even when my boys were small, I would put them on a backpack on my back and come out and hoe in the strawberries. This type of memory is important. It helps define who we are, and it should.
I'll be back for more of these as well.
Okay, we'll be waiting for you.
Okay, you guys have a blessed day.
You too.
As people check into the picking stand so we can weigh their containers before they go into the field, we tell them that they're welcome to sample. Don't make a meal on us. We tell the lady folks that you would not buy a dress without trying it on. It's okay.
All right, heads, let's keep going. Come on.
When the kids come out with red on their teeth and strawberry juice down their chin, we always ask them how the strawberries tasted. It's okay. The strawberry field's a place to be enjoyed.
At the Plateau Research and Education Center in Crossville, Tennessee, at the 11th Annual Fall Gardeners Festival, we sit down with Professor Alane Windham of Plant Pathology with UT Extension, who discusses common diseases of woody ornamentals and shade trees in our state, along with educating us that not all insects are pests, which may come as a surprise to many.
I'm a professor of plant pathology with UT Extension. So my specialty is diagnosis and management of ornamental diseases, turf grass. I work with nurseries, greenhouses, sod farms, golf courses, of course, people that do landscape management, forages, so a lot of different things. There, you could look at it, there are some good plant diseases. There are some that are used for biocontrol of weeds, which would be useful, but there's not too many that we would care to hang around. So any plant problem, I talk to a lot of people and usually it's, well, I've already self-diagnosed and I've already treated with this. I'm like, okay, well, the diagnosis was wrong, so you use the wrong treatment. But what I would suggest is taking some photos or a sample and taking it to your local extension office and let the agent there who knows a lot of the local problems look at it. If they can't identify it, then they will send it to us in Nashville at the Soil Plant and Pest Center. And we have a lot of years. I think the three of us that do most of the diagnosis probably have about 120 years experience. So there's not much that we haven't seen. Organic options, we often recommend neem oil for powdery mildews and some leaf spots. There are some copper fungicides that are like copper soaps that can be used. And there are some bicarbonate products. Now, the only downside of some organic products is you're going to be spraying them more often, maybe once a week rather than as opposed to every 2 to 3 weeks for a synthetic product, but they definitely have their place. Insects that cause problems, we often wait until there's a certain threshold or we see them and then we go and treat and everything's good. But with plant diseases, if you let the disease manifest itself and spread, then often you're talking about, okay, next year you do this because it's too late. So the only diseases that we would actually spray with a fungicide, organic or synthetic, would be those that we know historically are going to show up every year. And then we'd like to have them in place before the disease ever shows up to keep healthy plants healthy. You don't think of fungicide as curing a problem. Keeping healthy plants healthy is what we like to do. So there are plant pathogens that live in the soil that cause root rots and stem rots. I saw one yesterday on Black-Eyed Susan called Southern Blight, Southern Stem Rot. And it lives in the soil and basically has these little structures that germinate and it starts growing, and almost any plant it comes into contact with it will kill. But then we have other leaf spot diseases, mildews, rust. Yesterday I saw rust on a plant. I'd never seen rust before. It's not even been reported in the US. So there's always new stuff that you run into. But there are fungi that live on the plant, on the foliage, may attack the flowers, the fruit, also the roots. So all plant parts are susceptible. Plant pathogen can be spread a lot of ways. So the global movement of plant material is a way that we have gotten downy mildews into the US in the past 10 years. Downy mildew of impatiens, downy mildew of basil. Didn't even exist in the US 15 years ago. So walked out in my garden yesterday, there on the sweet basil was downy mildew. 15 years ago I never would have seen that. But because it's been moved from Europe here, we now have to deal with that. In most years you'll now find it in all 33 states east of the Mississippi. So it's here to stay. We move infected plant material. So moving infected plant material from the West Coast to Tennessee, sometimes we move plant pathogens that way. And then long distance. A storm like we had this week can actually pick up the spores in Houston, Texas, and as the front moves through, it will deposit those in Middle Tennessee and spread it that way. So there's long distance transport that way. So with plant disease, it starts in many different ways. You may go out one day and see a plant that just wilted. The foliage is just flopped down. And it could be due to the roots are dead, so you'd have to pull it and look at the roots. Or it could be, I mentioned southern blight, a stem rot. You look at the stem right at the soil line for white fungal growth and little structures. But then for leaf spots, you look for developing lesions on the leaves. With mildew, you look for white fungal growth on the upper leaf surface for powdery mildew or the lower leaf surface for downy mildew. One of my colleagues put out an alert today about late blight on tomato, which is a downy mildew. So there are things that show up late in the season. There's still people growing crops that could be affected. There's some things that they're old, but they've been really a problem this year, and one would be southern blight that I mentioned earlier, stem rot that causes plants to wilt. It's been a problem in vegetable gardens and perennial gardens. Basil downy mildew, it's back every year. And 15 years ago, as I mentioned, you wouldn't even see it anywhere in Tennessee or the US. And it's here to stay. And I found it in my own garden yesterday. So it's here. We're also investigating a disease new to Tennessee that's hitting sassafras. So we're trying to confirm that, but there's a disease called laurel wilt that in Middle Tennessee in some counties is killing hundreds of sassafras. So not only will it hit sassafras, but it hits other plants in that family, which would be our native spice bush that would grow in this area of the plateau. There seems always to be something new. Plant diseases that affect the quality of vegetables and fruit most people would not consume. They just don't appear like something that you would want to eat. But as far as dangers from toxins or anything, there's really not. That's not the problem. The problem is just that the aesthetics of the fruit, the vegetables, they just don't look good. So you would not, you'd buy the one that's pretty and nice and not diseased compared to the one that has spots. But what happens if you did buy a watermelon, a tomato, banana, it would not last very long. If you kept it in your pantry for 2 days, it'd probably be consumed by the fungus that's growing on it. So that would be a reason everybody buys the nice looking fruit with no spots on it. Basil is susceptible to this new disease, downy mildew. Because this is a new problem, make sure that it's not already infected when you buy it. Make sure the plants you're buying are healthy and don't have this grayish fungal growth on the underside of the leaf. The other thing is just harvest periodically through the season to harvest what you can, because generally by this time of year, if you're growing basil, you're going to have downy mildew now. And as far as treatments, there's really not any good treatments for this to prevent it. And the one thing that separates this from some of the other downy mildews is this is seed transmitted. So just because you start your basil from seed doesn't mean you're not going to have a problem with downy mildew. It could still show up. So it's too cold here. On the plateau, it's too cold for this to overwinter and survive. The plant will survive, the fungus doesn't survive. So where does it grow? Well, it grows where the basil's not killed, either in greenhouses or growing in gardens in the Caribbean or Florida. So basically I say downy mildews, most downy mildews overwinter where we all would like to, and that's Florida. And then as the season progresses in the spring, it starts moving up because it produces a lot of spores. And this is one that a thunderstorm could pick up, and as the storm moves, could deposit the spores hundreds of miles away where it picked it up. So just removing it doesn't mean that your neighbor won't have a problem, because the spores could come in from another part of the country.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Live Green Tennessee, where we take you across our state into the farms and businesses of those who are making the moves to eating fresh, living sustainably, and helping us all be more organic in our thinking and the way we live our lives as Tennesseans. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time on Live Green Tennessee.
This program was made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.